People often ask me what's my philosophy of coaching, and I always speak to them about um, I really build defensive skills first and foremost. And when I mean defensive, I don't mean scrambling every ball. It's kind of like the keeping the ball in from the back of the court, making one more ball in your opponent, second serves, first serve returns, playing with margin, playing with space. Because what that aims or allows me to do is have a smaller different differentiation between my good and my bad. If I really build a game on offense, which is okay to do as well, don't get me wrong, is that my offense is great, but my defense is poor. Now, in a match, you're probably going to spend half the time in offense, half the time in defense. If I can win approximately 20%, um, sorry, let's say I'm in defense. If I can win, say, 30 to 40% of my defensive points, and lose, say, 60 to 70%, but I can win, say, 80% of my offensive points, for example, 70 to 80%, I'm going to be in a better shape than I would if I couldn't play in defense. And what you find is that the best players in the world, and you look at Rafa, Roger, Novak, Murray, Serena, Ash Barty, these players have had sustained success over periods of time. Simone Halep, um, they had the ability to be good defensively. They could move laterally, keep the ball in play, really disciplined on big moments. They could play the big points really well. They were steady. They didn't hit the biggest winners of all time, but they were steady and solid. Now, we don't spend with juniors enough time on the second serve return, on our first serve return, second serves, um, back of the court play. And I know in Europe, depending where you live, obviously in Australia we don't spend a lot of time defensively. We've got faster courts, so it's a lot of offensive based stuff, which breaks down a lot. But when you go across to Europe, maybe South America, it's a little different, a lot more focused based on the defensive side, clay courts, games a bit slower. So I think the defensive skills, in particular in Australia, don't get done enough. I know a lot of other areas they do, but if you can develop really sound defensive skills, you narrow the gap between your good and your bad. Now, if you want to win more often than not and create winnable habits, you're going to have to keep the ball in play. Tennis is an error-based sport. 70% of points at the top level of the game, the best players in the world finish in error. 70% of points, the top level of the game, finish in an error. So if we're thinking about that, we're thinking about, okay, I need to be more disciplined, play with more margin, be more steady than my opponent. Yes, when opportunity arises, my offense is important, but it's so important that we can play the ball in play as often as we can with more margin, with more spaces, have the right shot selection and decision making to do that. Where we spoke about in point number one was all about the thinking side of it. But the defensive skills become so critical in an error based sport. So, yeah, I'm really big on that at a young age to develop those fundamentals of defense and steadiness and consistency before I develop the offensive side.
So that brings me to the next question, which is how do you develop defense?
I think that from the word go, I think the right equipment's important. So obviously, now we've got a lot of the slower balls as a really younger players and have to rally and keep the ball in play longer with slower balls and bigger baseballs with the red, orange, and green. That helps to do that because it slows down the game and helps perceptually what we want to try and do. Well, a lot of the junior players I've got that might have been through that period of that hot shots development is they might be everything we do might be one ball drills where they have to value the ball. It might be counting drills where they've got to value the ball. But everything is based around keep the ball in play at least the first 20 minutes, 30 minutes, 40 minutes of your session, consistency based. When you warm up your serve, keep it in, roll it in, feel the court a little bit. When you're at the ground with your ground strokes, keep it in. When you volley to volley or you're doing one at the net, one at the base, your first initial start of it should be slow and controlled. Learn how to control the ball before you learn how to beat the crap out of the ball. Now, watching one year, we had the fortune of traveling with my coach at the time, my mentor and boss at the time, who was working with Maria Sharapova. And I saw Maria on TV hitting the crap out of the ball. And I was like, wow, man, she hits so hard. So I had this thought that everything that we had to do was, hit the ball hard because that's what Maria did. Then I watched her travel and play, and everything she did was slower. It was controlled, it was feel. And I was like, man, you train so different to the way you play. But as the session went on, she started to pick up the ball speed because she had court feel, had her margins, had her range. I think as juniors, we think that we see what we see on the TV is what we need to do from the first ball. And it's not. We have to slowly build our speed through a session to enable us to have feel, confidence, and rhythm to be able to then keep the ball in court when we do pick up the speed.